I am Khushi from 8th Pool. Today I am going to explain chapter 1 of geography, that is resources. So let's start. Before starting the chapter, we must know what are resources. So anything that can be used to satisfy a human need is called a resource. Every resource has a use. That is why they're important. For example, clothes, utensils, food, grains, comms, and many more things. This conversation between Mona, Raju, and their mother will help you to understand it better. Now, our next topic is utility or usability. It refers to the usefulness of an object. Substance becomes a resource only when we know how to use it. All the natural objects were present on the earth since ages, but early men were not aware about the usage of these resources because he was not having technology to use these substances. For example, earlier people used water only to quench their thirst, but later we start using it for irrigation, for industrial purpose, and for the generation of hydroelectricity. So now here the question arises, how does something become a resource? Its use or utility gives it a value. All resources have some value. Now value actually means worth. Some resources have economic value while some do not. For example, metals have an economic value. A beautiful landscape may not, but both are important and satisfy human needs. So here are some important terms. Read it out carefully and understand it properly. Patent. It means the exclusive right over an idea or invention. Our next term is technology. It is the application of latest knowledge and skill in doing or making things. Now there are three types of resources. First is human-made resources, natural resources, and the last one is human resources. So let's study them in detail now. First, we are going to study about natural resources. Now, what are natural resources? The resources which are drawn from nature and used without much modification are called natural resources. Means we are not modifying them. For example, the air we breathe, the water in our rivers and lakes, the soils, minerals, and are all natural resources. Now, what are the types of natural resources? Natural resources are classified into different groups depending upon their level of development and use, origin, stock, and distribution. On the basis of their development and use, resources can be classified into two groups, actual and potential resources. Based on their origin, resources can be biotic or abiotic. Natural resources can be broadly categorized into renewable and non-renewable resources. On the basis of their distribution, resources can be ubiquitous or localized. Now, what is the distribution of natural resources? The distribution of natural resources depends upon number of physical factors like terrain, climate, and altitude. The distribution of resources is unequal because these factors differ so much over the earth. Now, let's study about human-made resources. Sometimes what happens is that natural substances become resources only when their original form has been changed. Means we have to modify it. For example, iron ore was not a resource until people learned to extract iron from it. People use natural resources to make buildings, bridges, machinery, and vehicles, which are known as human-made resources. Technology is also a human-made resource. Now, what are human resources? Human resources refer to the number and abilities of the people. People themselves are human resources. Education and health help in making people a valuable resource. Improving the quality of people's skills so that they are able to create more resources is known as human resource development. People themselves are the most important resource. It is their ideas, knowledge, and discoveries that lead to the creation of more resources. Each discovery or invention leads to many other. For example, the discovery of fire led to the practice of cooking, and same with the discovery of wheel. It led to the practice of newer modes of transport. Now, what are conserving resources? What is the conservation of resources? Using resources carefully and giving them time to get renewed is called resource conservation. Mona had a nightmare. She dreamt that all the water on the earth had dried up and all the trees cut down. Can you imagine what would happen? Read this conversation between Mona and her mother so that you can know about the value of resources. Now, what is sustainable development? Carefully utilizing resources so that besides meeting the requirement of the present, also takes care of future generation. In other words, we can say that balancing the need to use resources and also conserve them for future is called sustainable development. There are some principles of sustainable development. Let's read them. Respect and care for all forms of life, conserve Earth's vitality and diversity, minimize the loss of natural resources, change personal attitude and practices towards the environment, enable communities to care for their own environment. Now, at last, I would just advise all of you to save our environment and use our resources wisely. Alone, we can do so little, together, we can do so much. Thank you. This was all about this chapter. Stay safe and stay home.